Right. Well, lovely to see you again, Jason. So just wanted to have a quick chat about where things are at with regards to e-commerce and what's happening in this fast-moving, somewhat crazy world we operate in. But for those of you who don't know Jason, so first of all, Jason Greenwood from Greenwood Consulting. Check out greenwoodconsulting.net. Jason and I have worked on a number of projects together with clients who are both in B2C e-commerce and B2B e-commerce, although clearly more B2B as of late. And Jason provides consulting services to help those clients decide on endpoints or applications to use in their e-com strategy, their stack, I guess, of applications. You can talk more about that in a minute. And then we often work together, obviously, to do the integration side of things, where we assist with connecting those endpoints and those applications for critical data to be synchronized between those and for business processes to be able to be supported. Yeah, nice to see you. Welcome. And how are you?
Awesome to be here with you today, Mark. And as I point out, we've worked on some amazing projects together with joint clients. Some of them less complex, some of them more complex. In all cases, I think one of the things that stands out to me is I haven't worked on a project for probably 10 years or more that did not have a significant component of system and data integration as part of it. There just is, nothing operates in a vacuum. When it comes to e-commerce or omni-channel or digital retail, nothing operates in a vacuum, whether it be a system or a process or a data silo. Nothing operates in a vacuum. And basically, brands and businesses always get more value. The more integrated and automated their systems are, the more value they get collectively. And I hate that word synergy, but it's true in this case. The more synergistic value they get out of all of their systems, the more tightly integrated, more efficiently they can share data in near real time with each other, the more efficient the overall business operation becomes. And so I'm just not seeing any projects that don't have some form of system integration as a key component of the project, because today's systems, there's more systems now than ever before that are part of a modern omni-channel commerce stack. There are multiple best of breed systems, whether it be ERP, CRM, CDP, PIM, e-commerce, point of sale. There's multiple best of breed systems out there, and what works for one merchant will not work for another. And so you're right. Our fit for commerce framework looks at their business through multiple lenses. It's people, it's process, it's tech, and it's data. And you'll notice that I intentionally didn't say tech first, because from our perspective, tech is just a tool, and it can either enable or disable a business. We're all about what are the other components of a business that really need to be there to take advantage of this modern technology, use it to its fullest potential, and understand how it needs to be integrated together for best effect.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, we've certainly seen a strong increase in demand for our services over the last 2 years, in particular during the whole COVID pandemic period. But one thing I wanted to get your thoughts on in particular is the addition of a PIM, a product information management system, into the mix. We often deal with clients that have an ERP, be it a small to medium ERP, like, for example, an Infusion out of Christchurch that we've done quite a bit of work with, right through to the likes of, your Odoo, your NetSuite, and other packages of that nature, where quite often we find the client is limited to obviously the number of product attributes that can be utilized and can be successfully transmitted across to the website for the product data, the product details to be enriched and to be as comprehensive as possible for, all sorts of functionality to be able to be supported at the front end. So I really wanted to get your view on how many companies are actually looking at using PIM in their e-commerce stack versus those that are upgrading from an accounting system to an ERP. And often, that is a big step and they're not even ready to think about PIM. So what are your thoughts on where that all comes into play, and what kind of value does a PIM add in terms of an e-commerce operation, particularly, I guess, in the B2B space?
I guess historically, what I used to see before PIMs became more common, because they're definitely very common now. They weren't, even going back pre-COVID, they maybe weren't as common. If you go back 5 years ago, they were less common, and then 10 years ago, many brands hadn't even heard that term, product information management platform, before, unless they were very large. And so it definitely has become a platform or a technology or a component that has seen its coming of age really over the last 2 to 5 years in a big way. But if we move back before that, even for brands that had an ERP that was working well for them, that did all their financials, and maybe they even had the CRM as part of their ERP, and they were running help desk out of the CRM, and it was the single source of truth for their financials. It was the single source of truth for all their core product data. When I say core product data, I mean things like the name, the SKU, the price, the inventory, the real nuts and bolts of a product. Maybe even the concept of a parent product, a child product, or its variants maybe existed in the ERP, but that was about it. And that still to this day, in many cases, is how it operates. An ERP really needs a minimal amount of data around a product to function. It needs a minimal amount of data to be able to create a product in the ERP, to be able to sell a product out of the ERP, and be able to charge the customer the right price of that product. And so ERPs, I guess, have minimal requirements to make them happy around the level of product enrichment and product data that a product has to keep them happy. Now, obviously, when we're talking about human beings and we're talking about the level of data that a customer needs to be able to interpret a product, to understand a product, to consider a product, to buy a product with confidence, and particularly in a digital environment like an e-commerce website, the level of data required to do that goes exponential. And so we now have long descriptions, we got short descriptions, we got structured data, we got unstructured data, we got product attributes, we got colors, we got sizes, we got all of this different plethora of data. Then we've got images, and we've got, particularly in the B2B world, we've then got other technical data like tech spec sheets. We've got all of the technical details around a product that a B2B customer would often need to have, particularly if they're reselling that product onto the end consumer. They need a tremendous amount of data. Some of those will take the form of PDFs and special product detail images, etc., technical breakdowns and expansions and explosions of a product, and bill of materials detail, for example.
Yep.
And so we have an explosion of data around products for both B2B consumers of that data and B2C consumers of that data. And what we're seeing is that PIMs are uniquely positioned to be able to structure that data, be able to manage that data, be able to manage the data enrichment workflows in ways that ERPs were never, ever designed to do. And so, you asked the key question: how many brands today manage all of their product data inside of a ERP versus having a PIM and an e-commerce website? Well, it's probably about 50-50 today. And what I would say is that even in the scenario where a brand does not have a PIM today, they will do some or all of that product enrichment directly in the e-commerce platform as if it was their PIM.
Right.
So the ERP will typically only have that base product data, maybe a long description or something like that. ERPs are typically not designed to be able to have the flexibility of a PIM, particularly when you need data to be unique by sales channel. All PIMs have the ability to structure product data and attributes uniquely by channel. So you might have data that goes out to your e-commerce platform. You might have data that goes out to different marketplaces like eBay and TradeMe and Catch and Amazon. And they will all have different attributes and different structures of those attributes that they will want to receive so that they can list them in the appropriate way on those platforms. Then we've got social selling, and we need data structured in a different way for social selling. So PIMs really do come into their own. But what I've historically seen is that the most enriched data set that most brands have around their product is their website. It's that simple. So even if they've never had a PIM before, oftentimes the data that we initially push into the PIM comes from their e-commerce website, because typically what they've done is they've maybe pushed some base product data into their website, then they've uploaded images, they've uploaded descriptions, they've uploaded product attributes, they've uploaded table data around those products. And so their website is the most enriched version of their product that they actually have available. And so that usually becomes the starting point for PIM data.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a very good summary. It's also a interesting ratio when you say that 50% of companies are using PIMs, and obviously leaves 50 that are not. So there's a huge potential there for
a gap.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. A great number of companies that could benefit from learning more about using PIM to enrich their product data.
Well, it becomes their single source of truth for product data that is going to be channel ready, right? And I think that's the key. You know, an ERP system is designed to be the single source of truth around typically your transactional data and everything to do with transactional data. So transacting with a customer and the single source of truth around the customer record, etc. CDP is to the customer record what PIM is to the product record, right? So we have much more information within a customer data platform. In the context of ERP, CDP is to customer data what PIM is to product data.
So in terms of platforms, are there any that stand out that say some of the listeners of this video might want to have a look at?
Look, I'm a partner with Riversand, and the reason that I partnered with Riversand initially is because I've been aware of Riversand for many years, and I've seen it implemented with certain client engagements previously that I had nothing to do with. I came to that client, they already had Riversand in place, and so I had nothing to do with it, and I can't claim credit for that. But then more recently, I've had clients that have needed to go through a very detailed PIM search and select process to identify the platforms that would potentially be the best fit for them. And so I've been able, particularly during COVID and the explosion of e-commerce, and particularly with B2B, product models within the B2B world can be really complex. They can be sometimes vastly more complex than they are for the B2C world.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, again, because resellers need more data usually to be able to sell that product than your end consumer would ever need, right? And so as I saw that need increase, and as I went through that search and select process a couple of times with some really large, complex key clients, we settled on jointly Riversand as being the best fit for them. And in the other side of in another breath, I realized that this made a great platform for me to standardize on as a very, very feature-rich PIM that could be adapted to many, many different commerce environments, whether it be B2B, B2C, a combination, D2C, basically full omni-channel environments. I've looked at many different PIMs. I've actually implemented other PIMs before when I was working in the merchant space as a merchant. I was working on the merchant side of the equation. There's another PIM that's very popular down in ANZ called Comistry. And some of the other PIMs that your audience may have heard of are PIMs like Akenio. It's a French PIM. They recently got a large investment and they're making good penetration inroads into the ANZ region. They potentially have heard of PIMcore, InRiver. There's a couple of other major PIMs that are pretty well known in the marketplace, but those would be the majors. And what I've seen in comparison to other PIMs is the level of flexibility, the business rules that you can have inside the platform, the workflow management of enrichment, the ability to hand off at different points during a workflow from different users inside the organization. So one person might be in charge of the photography and videography. One person might be in charge of writing the descriptions. One person might be in charge of putting the other attributes against a product before it goes to a final, maybe a marketing manager or a digital manager for final sign off before it goes out to those digital channels. So I guess the workflows around product management have become much more complex over the last few years. And unless you have a PIM that can manage those complex environments and even the linking between related products, upsells, cross-sells, you're going to have to do all that manually if your PIM can't do that and you can't manage it in your PIM. And even the parentage of a product from parent to child, if you can't manage that and those relationships within your PIM, you're still going to have to do lots of other product management in lots of other platforms. And so the more complete your PIM can be, the more useful it will be to your business.
Yes, no, absolutely. And Riversand is also a platform that we've obviously worked with from an integration perspective, can say that it's definitely a great platform to work with. So thank you, Jason. That's obviously really useful background. So for anyone who wants to explore the use of a PIM, if you want to have a chat with Jason about that, check out, as I said earlier, greenwoodconsulting.net. We are obviously available to help with the integration of PIM or other platforms with your e-commerce front ends. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to catch up once again. Thank you. And yeah, look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.
Absolutely. And maybe next time we'll talk about CDP.
Sounds like a plan.
Cheers,
All right.
Mark.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
you.